A volcano can erase anything in seconds. No trace, no evidence, no second chances. So here's the question no one wants to ask. What if we used them to erase our biggest mistake, our trash? Every year, humans create mountains of waste, millions of tons, growing, spreading, suffocating the planet. And yet, right beneath our feet, there are giant, burning pits of molten rock hot enough to melt almost anything. Sounds like the perfect solution, right? But here's the strange part. Nobody's actually doing it on a global scale. Why? At first glance, it seems obvious. Dump trash into lava. It burns. It disappears. Problem solved. But that assumption hides something deeper. Something dangerous. Because volcanoes don't just destroy things, they react. And this is where it gets weird. Not all volcanoes behave the same. Some flow calmly, like thick rivers of fire. Others explode without warning, launching ash and molten rock miles into the sky. Choosing the wrong one wouldn't just fail. It could trigger a disaster. So now the question changes. Not can we do it, but what happens if we try? Because if even a small test could trigger violent reactions, what would happen if an entire country tried it? And that's when things start to unravel. Because the real problem isn't just the volcano. It's everything it touches. And the deeper you go, the less this idea looks like a solution and more like a hidden catastrophe waiting to happen. Let's start with scale. One country alone produces over 250 million tons of trash every year. Now imagine transporting all of that, not to a landfill, but to a volcano. Sounds simple until you look at the map. There are about 1,500 potentially active volcanoes on Earth. That sounds like a lot, but here's the catch. Most of them are nowhere near major population centers, for obvious reasons. So now you're moving millions of tons of garbage across countries, oceans, and unstable terrain. And that's when costs explode. But here's the strange part. Even if you somehow solve the logistics, you might arrive at the wrong volcano. Because only a specific type can even come close to handling this idea. Shield volcanoes. These are the slow, steady ones. They form lava lakes, thick, glowing pools that seem perfect for dumping waste. Controlled, predictable, almost inviting. But that's not even the craziest part. They're rare. Most volcanoes are their violent cousins, stratovolcanoes. These don't flow. They erupt. Explosively. Built-up pressure. Trapped gases. Sudden release. Dumping trash into one of those. That's not disposal. That's fuel. And this is where it gets dangerous. Because now you're not just dealing with waste anymore. You're dealing with a system that can turn one wrong move into a full-scale eruption. So even if you find the perfect volcano, you're still standing on the edge of something unpredictable. And what happens next changes everything. Imagine you're the first person sent to test it. You drive closer. The air thickens. Toxic fumes burn your lungs. The ground vibrates beneath your feet. You're standing at the edge of a boiling lava lake. And now, you throw something in. It hits the surface. And for a split second, nothing happens. But here's the strange part. Lava lakes aren't stable. They're pressurized systems. Beneath that glowing surface is trapped gas, heat, and volatile chemicals waiting for a disturbance. And your trash? It's cold. That temperature difference triggers something violent. A chain reaction. Steam forms instantly. Expands. Explodes. In one real experiment, a relatively small bag of waste triggered explosive bursts from the lava itself. Now scale that up. Millions of tons. Entire truckloads. Continuous dumping. And suddenly, you're not disposing of waste. You're detonating it. And this is where it gets terrifying. Natural rock falls into lava have already launched molten material dozens of meters into the air. Now imagine controlled dumping on an industrial scale. It wouldn't stay controlled for long. It would turn chaotic, unpredictable, possibly unstoppable. And that's when the idea collapses. Because instead of solving a problem, you may have just created a new one. And it's far more violent than anything we started with. Even if you somehow survive the explosions, there's another problem. The air. Because burning trash isn't the same as melting it. And this is where it gets weird. Volcanoes don't filter anything. When waste burns in controlled facilities, toxic gases are captured, reduced, or neutralized. But inside a volcano, everything is released directly into the atmosphere. Plastic, chemicals, heavy metals, all vaporized, all airborne. And that's not even the worst part. Not everything breaks down. Some materials resist extreme heat. Others partially melt, forming new toxic compounds. And when the volcano eventually erupts, those materials don't stay buried. They come back, ejected, scattered across land, water, and air. So instead of removing pollution, you've redistributed it on a massive scale. But here's the twist that changes everything. The process of getting trash to the volcano might cause more harm than the trash itself. Transporting millions of tons requires fuel, ships, trucks, infrastructure. Emissions skyrocket. So while trying to destroy waste, you're creating even more of it. And suddenly, the idea flips. What looked like a clean solution becomes a cycle, a loop, one that feeds itself. And the deeper you look, the less sense it makes. So now the question isn't whether volcanoes can destroy trash. It's whether we should ever try. At this point, the illusion is gone. Volcanoes aren't nature's trash cans. They're ticking systems of pressure, heat, and chaos. And trying to use them like tools? That's where everything falls apart. Because what we thought was destruction is actually transformation. And that changes the entire story. Instead of disappearing, waste becomes something else. Toxic gases, airborne particles, eruptive debris. It doesn't vanish. It spreads. And this is where it gets unsettling. The more extreme the solution, the more unintended consequences it creates. So maybe the real problem was never, where do we put our trash? But why are we creating so much of it in the first place? Because every shortcut leads to a trade-off. And every perfect solution hides a cost. But that's not even the final twist. If volcanoes can't safely destroy our waste, people have proposed something even more extreme. Launching it into space. No atmosphere. No return. No contamination, right? But that opens an entirely new set of risks. Failures. Explosions. Debris in orbit. And suddenly, the problem